No one warned Adam about the house. It was a lone structure perched right on the edge of the desert, where the city's neon glow finally gave up, and a heavy silence pressed in on all sides. The rent was cheap. Suspiciously cheap. But Adam, a sound designer working on a new horror film, saw it as a stroke of incredible luck, a place where he could capture perfect, untainted audio. The first few nights were peaceful, just the hum of the old refrigerator and the wind whispering against the windows. But then, the sounds began. It started subtly. Every night, at precisely 2:17 a.m., he'd hear them. Soft footsteps, circling his bed. The sound was slow, deliberate, and strangely light. Bare feet on the wooden floor, but it sounded as if they weren't quite touching it, just hovering an inch above. Each time, Adam would flick on the lamp, his heart hammering against his ribs, only to find the room completely empty. The floorboards were bare. Nothing was out of place. He tried to rationalize it, the house settling, his own mind playing tricks on him after long hours of editing unsettling soundscapes. But the timing was too precise. Always 2:17 a.m. On the fourth night, the footsteps were joined by something else, whispering at first. It was just a faint murmur like a radio tuned between stations. But as he strained to listen, he recognized the words. It was Dika, the remembrance of God, but it was wrong, all wrong. The familiar, sacred words were recited with bizarre pauses, twisted, unnatural tones, and a breathy quality that felt like it didn't come from any human lung. It was a mockery, a perversion of something holy. Adam's blood ran cold. He sat bolt upright in bed, the sheets clutched in his fists. He managed to force a single question into the suffocating silence. Who's there? The whispers stopped instantly. The air in the room became still, heavy. Then, from the darkest corner of the room, a voice answered. It wasn't a whisper. It was calm, deep, and tinged with a chilling amusement. You hear me? It said. Because you listen. Pure terror seized him. Adam scrambled out of bed, fumbling for the door, and bolted to the bathroom, slamming the door and locking it behind him. His heart pounded so hard he could feel it in his ears. He pressed his back against the cold wood, trying to catch his breath. From the other side of the wall he heard a knock, once, then twice. Then the most horrifying sound of all began. The voice started to pray, but it wasn't praying asterisk to asterisk's God. It was praying asterisk with asterisk him, mimicking his every word, its voice a dark echo of his own frantic pleas for protection. The next morning, Adam was a wreck. He hadn't slept a second. As the first rays of sun streamed through the dusty windows, he cautiously stepped out of the bathroom. The house was quiet, too quiet. As he walked back into his bedroom, he stopped dead. There, on the wooden floor, were footprints, but they weren't made of dust or dirt. They were burned into the planks, blackened and scorched as if from an intense, internal heat. The footprints led from the corner of the room directly to his prayer mat, which lay undisturbed by the wall. The sight made his stomach turn. This was no prank. This was no dream. This was real. He spent the day in a haze of fear, contemplating packing his bags and leaving everything behind. But his equipment, his work, he couldn't just run. He convinced himself he could fight it. He would stay awake. He would face it. That night, he armed himself with coffee and light. Every lamp in the small house was on, casting sharp, overlapping shadows. He sat in a chair in the living room, facing the bedroom door, his recording equipment set up nearby. He wanted proof. He needed proof. As the clock ticked past midnight, the house grew colder. A deep, unnatural chill that had nothing to do with the desert night seeped through the walls. The air grew thick and heavy, making it hard to breathe. He watched the digital clock on his laptop. 2:15, 2:16. At exactly 2:17 a.m., the lights in the house flickered once, then went out, plunging him into near-total darkness, save for the faint glow of his laptop screen. He stared into the blackness of the bedroom, and he saw his own shadow on the wall, cast by the screen's light. But it wasn't behaving normally. It stretched, elongating in a grotesque, unnatural way. It seemed to pull away from the wall, detaching itself, gaining depth and form until it was no longer a shadow, but a three-dimensional figure standing upright. A tall, faceless silhouette emerged from the doorway, its form wavering like heat haze, where its eyes should have been. 2 points of light glowed like dying embers. A voice, the same calm, deep voice from the night before, filled the room, though its mouthless face didn't move. I am not summoned, it said, its tone dripping with ancient power. I arrive when faith is weak, and fear is strong. Adam, paralyzed with terror, finally found his voice. He screamed out verses of protection, the words he had known since childhood, his only defense against this encroaching darkness. But his voice trembled, thick with doubt and raw panic. The Jinn, the faceless thing before him, seemed to smile, a psychic impression of pure malice. You said them with doubt, it hissed, the sound echoing not in the room but inside Adam's own mind. The figure took a step forward, and the last thing Adam knew was an overwhelming cold and the sound of his own screams mixing with a dark, mocking prayer. The neighbors later told the police they'd heard strange sounds that night. It started around 2:30 in the morning. They described it as prayers mixed with terrified screaming, a horrifying duet that echoed through the thin desert air until the sun finally rose. When the police eventually entered the silent house, they found it empty. There was no sign of a struggle, no sign of Adam. Everything was neat, except for the scorched footprints on the bedroom floor. The only thing out of place was a single microphone, sitting on a tripod in the living room, its red light still blinking. It was still recording. When the investigators played back the audio file, they heard the screaming, the prayers, the silence, and then, after a long pause, a new sound, a soft whisper, picked up by the sensitive microphone, a voice that seemed to come from everywhere at once. It was the same calm, deep voice, now laced with an eternal, chilling satisfaction. "He prays with us now,"